and welcome to my channel. My name is Rachel for those of you who are new. Today I'm doing something that I found really exciting. I actually found this about a month ago on YouTube, and I decided to finally film my story. This is the birth story tag. It was created by Sarah, aka Mommy, here on YouTube. I will link her channel below so you can find her, and I'll also link the playlist for all the other videos if you would like to go check those out. They're actually really cool to see everybody's story. So this tag she created, it's a little bit different. This is for majority of the moms that you will see did not have a YouTube channel prior to their children's births. So like for me, in my case, I am actually currently pregnant, but I have 3 older daughters, and I did not have a YouTube channel when I was pregnant or expecting either any one of them. So this is a cool way for me to tell my birth story without having been able to before, now that I do have a YouTube channel. So let's go ahead and get started. It's 10 questions. Sorry, trying to get comfortable. 37 weeks pregnant, not easy. So let's hop on in. Question number 1 is, how many births prior to this one? 3. I was pregnant 3 times before my oldest was born, but I had 3 miscarriages, but I have had 3 full-term births since then. Number 2, were they vaginal or C-section? And I actually had all 3 of them vaginal. My oldest was almost a C-section. Like, I barely missed a C-section. Thankfully, I had an amazing doctor, and he took his time and he didn't rush things, and he was very patient, and he worked hard to make sure I did not have to have a C-section. I actually talked to him, my husband and I talked to him after my oldest was born, when I went to see him for my, I think it was 4 week. I think he wanted to see me 4 weeks after she was born. So when we went to go see him after she was born, my husband even asked him, he's like, so were you, because he is a Christian, he said, so did you pray at all during? He said, oh yeah. He said, I knew you wanted more children, and I didn't want to risk your future pregnancies by rushing into a C-section, because if I had done the C-section, then I would be at greater risk for future pregnancies, to either have to have more C-sections, and then the scarring and the risk of rupturing. So he had to take all of that into account, and he did everything he could to make sure I had a vaginal birth, and it was amazing. So thank you to you, Dr. Dodd. Question number 3, epidural or natural? My first, I had an epidural. I went into labor with my oldest, Hannah. Man, it was like a Friday, super early in the morning. So it was like probably around midnight, between midnight and 2 o'clock in the morning. I started having contractions, and they were strong from the get-go, even though they were really inconsistent. So it was very early labor. Even though it was inconsistent, they were strong, so I couldn't sleep through them. I tried changing positions, I tried getting up and going outside, sitting on the couch. Nothing felt comfortable. So we ended up, my husband took off Friday from work, just in case, so he could be with me. And we live really close to a golf course at the time, and my husband loves to golf, and I knew he'd have to take some time off from golfing, because we'd have a newborn and I would need help. So I told him, hey, why don't we go to the golf course? You can play, I'll walk and as much as I can through the golf course with you as you're playing each hole. And he thought that was a fabulous idea. So we took off to the golf course and spent our day there. And I think he played like the 1.5, almost 2 whole rounds of golf. And I did a whole lot of walking. And then I also did a whole lot of sitting, just because I got to the point where I couldn't walk. I was exhausted. We stayed out there for a few hours and ended up going back home. My contractions were still probably at the time, probably like 8 minutes apart. And my doctor was saying that I shouldn't go into the hospital until my contractions were 3 to 5 minutes apart, lasting at least a minute each. So I still had a whiles to go. By this time, it's I want to say it was like probably close to 7 o'clock in the evening. So we went home, I showered, made some food, ended up not eating anything because I just was not hungry. And by midnight I could not handle my contractions anymore, and I told Jose, we'd been timing them, and I said, okay, they've been about 4.5 minutes apart for an hour or more now, and they're lasting a while. So we called the hospital. They said come on in, and even after that we still waited another like hour to go in. So I'm thinking when we get there I'm gonna be like 4 centimeters hopefully. So they get me in a room, they check me, and they tell me the horrifying news that I was only 1.5 centimeters. My heart dropped, and I looked at Jose and I said, oh my God, it's only gonna get worse. So she was not born until Saturday evening. So I went into labor very, very early Friday and didn't have her until Saturday at 7:14 in the evening. So I had been in labor for a while and I was completely exhausted. So I think I had reached 7.5 centimeters with nothing. I had gotten a couple of things like IV pain meds, but they were not touching my contractions. I also had Pitocin and they broke my water. So, you know, once your water breaks, those contractions are like next level pain. So I was just completely exhausted. I hadn't slept in over 24 hours at this point. The nurse came and told me, she checked me again and she said, sweetie, you're still 7.5 centimeters, but you're fighting your contractions now, and your cervix swelling closed. And at this point they had already broken my water, so the clock was ticking as far as time, because they only let you go so long before they have to do a C-section because of risk of infection. So I ended up getting an epidural at that point, and it helped. After I got that epidural, I looked at Jose and I said, never again am I going to try to do this natural. I felt like a failure at first, but after I got that thing and the medicine kicked in and I didn't feel any pain, I was like, what was I thinking? I'm never going to try this natural again. So with my first, had the epidural. With my second and third, Adrian came so fast that I was only in the hospital 20 minutes before she was born. So had I waited any longer, she would have been born probably somewhere on the freeway. So obviously I had to birth naturally. And because I was able to do it that time, I did it with Michaela also, my third. She was, her labor was only 4 hours. So I think I tried getting some pain medication in an IV, and I will never do that again. Whatever they gave me, I can't remember what it was, but it felt like my arm was on fire. It hurt worse than the contractions. So I will not be doing that again. I'll just deal with it. But and her labor was actually my easiest. I was able to manage my pain until I hit probably about 8 to 9 centimeters, you know, when that transition hits. So I plan on doing this fourth one natural as well. So 1 epidural and the others were without epidurals. So question number 4, was it a home birth or hospital? I had all 3 of my older daughters in the hospital. This child will be born at a birthing center, which I'm super excited about. Number 5, complication. I had quite the experience at the hospital with my oldest. The labor itself was extremely traumatic. The nurse that I had while I was actually getting ready to push, so in the last stages of labor, they had a shift change, and I got a new nurse. She was really old school, super sweet, but really old school and kind of incompetent. First things, my mom is a NICU nurse, so thankfully she was there with me, and she was keeping an eye on the monitors and helping me at the same time. But thankfully she looked at the monitors because she saw that Hannah, my oldest daughter, Hannah's heart rate was in the 200s, and she said this isn't good, but she didn't want to scare me, so she didn't say anything. She just kind of was like looking around trying to find the doctor, because he was doing his rounds in between my checking on me. And so when that happened, my mom had told Jose, I'm going to give this nurse 30 seconds to find the doctor, or I'm leaving to get him myself. And I have no clue what's going on. I'm completely oblivious to anything that's happening. I guess what happened was, after I got my epidural, they did not lower my Pitocin at all. So Hannah couldn't handle it. Her heart just was like, she was stressed out with how high the Pitocin was. So just as my mom was getting ready to leave to find my doctor, he comes rushing in, because his all the monitors he has connected to like an iPad or a phone or whatever, so he's been able to monitor. And he saw that this had been going on for over 15 minutes. My mom didn't realize it. She just had looked at the monitor and was like, oh, that's not good. So he came in, but he said, when were you going to tell me this baby's tacking? Which just means tachycardia, that her heart rate was just way too high. And he said, it's been almost 20 minutes. When were you going to come find me? So that happened. And then just before I started pushing, she checked my temperature, because they kind of have to do that. And it was slightly elevated, but she didn't say anything. And for me, it was, I think it was because I was finally able to rest and I stopped drinking, and I got really dehydrated. With the having the epidural, they kept saying eat ice chips at least, or take sips of water here and there, but I was just so worn out. I was trying to use that time to sleep and rest so that I could get some energy to push. So pushing took 2 hours, and just before our little girl entered the world, she took my temperature again, and I had a fever. So the next thing I know, NICU nurses come rushing in. There's 2 reasons for fevers: infection, dehydration. And if it was an infection, that's a bad thing, because she's passing through the birth canal and the infection could pass to her. So that's why the NICU nurses came in, because they wanted to check her and they had to take blood to make sure that she didn't have an infection also. Thankfully, her heart rate stabilized, and there was no infection. It was just, I only had the fever because I was dehydrated. And after that point, our stay at the hospital was pretty good, except for I had no help with nursing. So that's a completely different story. But with Adrian and Michaela, my births were really, really fast. My first was my traumatic, and then they just got easier from there. But this time I'm really excited to give birth at a birthing center. Number 6, funniest birth experience. The only thing I can think of when I heard this question, when I read this question, I was trying to think, what's so funny about birth? It's extremely hard and painful, but there are some really hilarious moments, I guess, that you can have. Mine was, I would say with my second, with Adrian. I am a really chill person. It takes a lot to rock my boat and make me upset. And I usually handle stress pretty well. But being in labor takes you to a whole nother place. So with her, I think my funniest birth experience was probably with her. So I was in labor with her, and they tell you you forget like some of the pain. You don't. That's a lie. It was the craziest feeling. So I was laboring at home. Jose was outside with me. Hannah was in bed. And our plan was to take her to my parents' house just before we left to go to the hospital. For me, the best position that I had found was being on my hands and knees and just kind of like swaying my hips back and forth. That took a lot of pressure off of my back, and I was able to labor with a lot less discomfort, and it was a lot easier for me to just breathe and manage my pain. So I was laboring out in the living room. Jose was reading to me and Hannah was sleeping. It was probably close to, she was born at just after 8 in the morning, and so this was probably close to about 6 o'clock in the morning, 6:30 maybe. So I had this, we're sitting there and I'm laboring and I'm breathing and I had this contraction, and for some reason this like flash, I almost had like a flashback to when I was in labor with Hannah, and the nurse told me after I had a contraction, she's like, you're 7.5 centimeters. And that contraction that I had in that moment took me back to that specific moment when I was in labor with Hannah. And I said, this is familiar. I think this is moving faster than I'm expecting. And at that point, I could not sit down. And you can't necessarily drive in a car on your hands and knees. So I'd have to sit down. And Hannah is, all of our girls are super tough and strong, Hannah especially. But if she saw one of us in pain, she'd lose it. Like, it scared the mess out of her, and I didn't want to scare her. She was not even 2 years old yet. So I told Jose, take Hannah to my mom and dad and then come back and get me. And I had been updating my mom on my phone, texting her my contractions and the times and everything, so she can kind of have an idea of where things were going and how I was progressing. And she probably wouldn't make it to work that day. So I had him go, which probably wasn't the best idea, but like I said, I didn't think I could sit down and be quiet and not make any kind of faces or be in any kind of discomfort, and I didn't want to scare Hannah. So I had him take her, and he's thinking, you know, I've been in labor for only like not even 7 hours at that time, actually not even 6 hours at the time. And Jose just didn't think I was progressing as fast as I thought I was progressing, because with Hannah I was in labor for so long. We thought maybe half the time, so maybe like at least 12 hours that I would be in labor this time. And it was only 5.5 at this point when I told him to go. So he dropped Hannah off and he's talking to my mom and just chit-chatting and playing like nothing. And my mom is looking at her phone at my contractions that I've been sending her, and she said, you need to go back and get Rachel. And he was like, there's no way she's that close. It took over 24 hours for Hannah. There's no way Rachel is even ready. And she was like, no, these contractions look pretty close together right now and they're pretty intense. You should get her and go to the hospital. So he said, okay, fine. So he drives back, and I call the doctor, not the doctor, the hospital, because my doctor had told us, don't call me, call the hospital when you go into labor. They have all my numbers so they can reach me the fastest. So I called the hospital and told them that we would be coming in and that I wanted an epidural. So they said, come in as fast as you can so that you are able to get the epidural, because if you progress too fast, then you won't be able to get it. So I said, okay. Hang up the phone, and as soon as I hung up the phone, I had a contraction and I felt like I needed to bear down. And I freaked out. I was like, oh no, Jose's not even here. I feel like I gotta push already. This is not good. This is not good. So I got all of our bags, put them in the garage. That way when he got there, he could just put them in there and then help me to the car. So he gets home and I'm laboring on the floor again. I'm just like leaned over on the couch, and he said, did you pack this? Did you pack? He's asked me all kinds of questions, and I was so frustrated. I was trying to hold it together. I was like, I don't want to be one of those movie wives that just is like, you know, yeah, did this to me. Well, he asked one last question. He's like, did you call the doctor? Or he said, did you call Dr. Dodd? And I'm thinking in my head, you don't call the doctor. He told us just a couple days ago, call the hospital and they'll get a hold of him. And so I finally just lost it. I snapped. I was like, can we just get in the car? Can we please just get in the car? And he looked at me, he was like, sure. So he got all of our stuff in the car and ready to go. And talking about it afterwards, he said he wanted to laugh so hard, but he was like, I had a feeling that wasn't the time. And I said, thank you for not. But I think for me, that's the most hilarious story to look back on, just because I'm so chill and usually really even keeled. And the fact that I lost it like that was just funny for me. Question number 7. How many people were a part of your birth? For Hannah's delivery, it was myself and Jose, my mom, and up until I hit about 7 centimeters or 8 centimeters, it was my mother-in-law. Once I got past that point, she took off, and my sister came. So it was my sister and my mom, other than myself and Jose, in the room for Hannah's birth. For Adrian's birth, again, it was myself, Jose, my mom, and that was pretty much it. She came so fast. I actually did invite my niece into the room, Jose's niece. I asked her if she would want to be a part of it because she expressed interest in being a labor and delivery nurse at the time, and she had never attended a birth. So I said, you're welcome to come watch Adrian's birth. But because she came so fast, Ariel missed it. She came in time for me to deliver the placenta, so poor thing was like traumatized. And then with Michaela, again, it was just Jose and my mom. So my mom has been a part of every birth, and she will continue to be a part of every birth because of her experience in nursing and with infants. And I just feel safe having her there because she's a really good help. The fact that she was there for Hannah's birth, she pretty much saved our lives because my nurse was not doing her job. Question number 8, full term or early? I had all of them full term. Hannah was born on her due date. Adrian was born 2 days before her due date, so full term. And Michaela was born 8 days after her due date. Question number 9, duration of labor. So my first, when I calculated everything, it was around the 40-hour mark for Hannah. It was around 40 hours, maybe just over 40 hours. For Adrian, it was between 6 to 8 hours. I can't remember exactly when I started when I went into labor. I want to say it was probably around between midnight and 3 in the morning. And she was born at just after 8 in the morning. So her labor was really short. And Michaela was exactly 4 hours. I went into labor at midnight. That was the first contraction that actually woke me up out of my sleep. And within an hour, I went from 10 minutes apart to 2 minutes apart. So it was progressing really quickly, and she was born at 4 in the morning. So 4 hours for her. Question number 10, recovery time. Okay, so with Hannah, as far as pain, I would say it wasn't bad, and I think that's probably because some of the epidural was still hadn't worn off yet. But it's the craziest thing. You know, so after you have your baby and you're nursing, your uterus starts to contract back to its normal size, and again, contractions. So you have contractions during labor, you have contractions after labor, which is wonderful. But with Hannah, I didn't feel them. So when she would nurse, I didn't feel any pain. They kept trying to shove Norco down my throat. They're like, do you want Norco? Do you want Norco? And I'm like, no, I told you my pain level was like a 1.5. Why would I want Norco? I said, just give me some Tylenol and I'll be fine. However, after that, with Michaela and Adrian and Michaela, oh my word, I was not prepared for those nursing contractions. Those were so painful. And when I wanted the Norco, they kept offering me like Tylenol, extra strength Tylenol. I'm like, yeah, that's gonna do absolutely nothing for the pain that I'm in right now. So I just had to deal. But yeah, so as far as those things were concerned, with Hannah, I had no pain during nursing. With Adrian and Michaela, I had those contractions during nursing, and that was horrible for like the first few days after they were born. But my recovery with Adrian and Michaela, I would say was probably a lot easier than with Hannah. So with Adrian and Michaela, I was like back on my feet right away, and I felt like I was recovering a whole lot faster. And even my husband noted, like after I had Michaela, he was shocked at how fast I got back. My energy level was great, and I felt great. I hope you enjoyed this birth story tag. I really enjoyed being able to film it and answer these fun questions and just reminiscing on past experiences, especially since I'm getting ready to have a new experience, which I will be sharing with after she is born, my birth story. I don't know if I'm going to be filming, just because I don't know if I'll want to be filmed during. I'll probably film afterwards, like after she's born, I'll probably film, and then I will share my story about her labor and delivery. But I hope you enjoyed this little birth story tag video. Again, I will link Sarah, aka Mommy's channel, below, so you can check her channel out if you'd like to. And I will also link the playlist below so you can watch all the other videos that are a part of this birth story tag. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, give this video a thumbs up. If you are new, I'd love for you to stick around, so go ahead and hit that red subscribe button and make sure your notification bell is turned on so you don't miss any further updates. And we will see you in the next one. Bye.